gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
It's time for the Early Bird Special. Bringing you the best stories from the world of sports and sports entertainment. Now, here are your hosts, Sparky and Burdick.
Well, good Friday morning, Bakersfield and surrounding communities, and everybody watching online. This is the Early Bird Special, a very special WrestleMania preview edition of the Early Bird Special. I'm Chris Burdick. That is Sparky. Sparky, happy WrestleMania Friday, my friend.
Happy Friday, man. There is so much going on.
Let them know what we're going down.
Not only will we start off this show, we'll talk about some Aaron Rodgers.
Of course.
After that Pat McAfee interview yesterday. And then we'll sprinkle in some Dion. Of course, Dion's in the news, talking Shador, talking Hunter. And then we'll wrap up this hour with some NBA previews as you are on ESPN Radio. So the doubleheader games tonight will be live right here. Plus, we'll kick off the next hour. We'll have 24KG with a special return as we preview SmackDown tonight going into WrestleMania. Tuesday, we talked day one of WrestleMania, yes. So we'll wrap that up with day two. And then we'll have Bolt Brady, the handicapper from Bolt Brady and Bro, and his bro,
BoltBradyandBro.com.
And we'll talk about the best ways to make your bets for the NBA playoffs. And then we'll wrap up the show like we do every Friday with our what we're watching this weekend, which everyone knows it'll be WrestleMania and whatever else we can fit in. But I am going to see a movie later today that we'll get into at the end of the show.
Which you need to tell me how this movie that you're going to see is, because it looks very, very good. But we'll get into that at the back half of the show. But let's jump right into this Aaron Rodgers situation. He spoke for the first time on the Pat McAfee show yesterday in quite some time, a couple months, in fact, just to clear the air, as he says his sister and I believe her husband are the ones who convinced him to go on the show and tell everybody exactly what's going on with Aaron and why he is doing what he's doing. Is he holding teams hostage? Is he just waiting around to see how things go in the draft? I mean, speculations have been running wild in the media world, especially in the world of sport. But let's hear from Aaron first on just what happened with the Jets.
I figured that when I flew across country on my own dime, that there was going to be a conversation. And the confusing thing to me and the strange thing was, you know, when I went out there, I meet with the coach. We start talking. He runs out of the room. I'm like, that's kind of strange. Then he comes back with the GM. And I'm like, all right. So we sit down in the office. And I think we're going to have this long conversation. I've flown across the country. And 20 seconds in, he goes, I mean, literally, I'm talking to the GM about something. And he leans to the edge of his seat and goes, so do you want to play football? And I was like, yeah, I'm interested. And he said, we're going a different direction at quarterback. So I said, huh? And he goes, we just want to know how you want it released, the messaging. What I thought was going to be a couple-hour meeting turned into like a 15-minute meeting. And I walked out of there. There was no me pleading like, please have me on the team. No.
Now, for those of you who need a little bit of breakdown here, this is Aaron discussing the interaction that happened between him, new Jets head coach Aaron Glenn, and the general manager of the Jets when they were trying to figure out whether Aaron was going to be a part of the team next year or part of the team going forward as a whole. Obviously, from hearing that story, and I believe Aaron's telling the truth here. Just something tells me that this is probably not exactly how it went, but definitely how it came off to Aaron. And being that Aaron Glenn is the one in question, essentially interrogating Rodgers, because we have to separate here because they're both named Aaron, obviously. So Glenn obviously is interrogating Rodgers, trying to figure out, do you even want to play football? Now, valid question, right, Spark? Because we don't know if Aaron wants to play football.
It kind of feels like they were already deciding.
Right.
The decision was made that they were moving away from him.
Right. And that's where I understand Aaron's frustration. This could have been a phone call. It seems to me like you already had a pre-existing situation in your head that you wanted to go down. And McAfee brought up a good point, too, after they finished with Aaron. Maybe he just maybe Aaron Glenn just wanted Rodgers to put some fight up, say, no, I want to be here with the Jets. Like, this is where I want to play.
Like he said, no,
nobody wants to play for the Jets.
no.
Let's be honest.
Nonetheless,
here.
Coach him.
Exactly. Well, no, apparently Aaron Glenn's the only person on the planet that wanted to. That wants
he's
to
got
coach
a history with them.
and Rex Ryan.
Ugh.
But
it's still the Jets, and
it's still the Jets.
But
so,
overall, like that 15-minute conversation. I mean, he did 45 minutes with McAfee,
right?
And that was on a Zoom call, so that could have been done over a phone call. But to make the guy fly over, and it's not like
from
not like he had
California
anything done,
all the way to New Jersey. And for anybody who's like, oh, what a pretentious athlete, he couldn't spend 15 minutes with these people. That's not at all what this is. Imagine that you got called out to a place states away, had to pay out of your own pocket to pay for this flight, and then you get there 15 minutes later of what you thought was going to be a good work meeting, and you get fired.
Yeah, I mean, if you're under contract with a team, you would think there would be respect on both sides, obviously. And you fly the guy out, and, with a team that's under new management pretty much.
Yeah.
And he wants to, sit down, see what the future holds with the team and with him with the team. And, I mean, the funniest part was when he said that Glenn, ran out.
Mm-hmm.
And
went and grabbed the GM and pulled him back in.
Yeah.
That honestly probably should have been your first indicator that this isn't going to go the way I think it's going to go. When your supervisor runs to go grab his supervisor to bring him in, or HR, I guess, in this department.
Yeah. But I mean, coming from a former, superstar with Aaron Glenn, you would think that conversation would have went a little different coming from a former player into, somebody that's going to be probably a first ballot Hall of Famer, even though the last few years haven't been Rodgers, but just going into it, you would think, player to player, coach to player,
right?
This conversation would have went a little more respectful.
At least have some sort of a better understanding of how they would want it to go down. I agree with you 100%. But I feel like this also ties into the fact that Aaron is so polarizing in himself. Everybody already comes into whatever situation with him. Either you like him or you don't, and there's really no in between. So I think Aaron Glenn probably was just on the I don't like him situation.
Yeah, I mean, he's spent the last few years in Detroit.
Right.
So it goes back to the Detroit Green Bay days.
Right.
And I'm sure he isn't a fan of him, and I'm sure it goes both ways.
And yeah, I'm sure that his antics off the field as well, and his run with the COVID vaccine and all that type of stuff, or run against the COVID vaccine probably didn't help either. But I'm sure I agree with you. I think that coming into this meeting, Glenn already knew he was going to tell him, we're moving on from you. But if that is the case, why have him fly out there?
And then going into later in the clip that we just played was, the messaging.
Right.
And how do you want this messaging?
Right. Which we didn't even get that part of it in the clip. Basically, Aaron Glenn tells him, I don't want to announce this to the team with everybody then turning behind them and looking back at you in the locker room.
And then he blows up saying, you'd think I would be sitting in the back of the room.
Which that is insulting, though. I agree with Aaron. What are you talking about? You mean to tell me that you believe that Aaron Rodgers, after being told that we're moving on from you and you're cut from the team, he's just going to magically be in the back of a team meeting for the Jets, and all of the players are going to be like, who is this joker, Aaron? You're our Aaron. Why is this Aaron telling us that Aaron is no longer on the team? That doesn't happen. And honestly, I don't think Aaron Rodgers had that kind of pull with the teammates in the first place to even be able to do that.
I mean, Devontae is gone. A lot of the players that he brought in are already gone.
Right.
So it was already, written out that he was probably knowing flying in that this was going to be the final stage with the Jets.
This doesn't make Aaron Glenn look good at all.
No,
it really doesn't.
Which we'll get into a bit later, because there's other, sports announcers that think opposite. But hearing the interview with McAfee and Rodgers, it definitely makes the Jets sound like what we've been saying for weeks.
Dumpster
the Jets.
Fire. Yeah, absolute dumpster fire. But on the other side of this, Aaron has obviously been fielding interviews and whatnot and trying to find out where he's going to be playing football next year, if he's going to be playing at all. So let's hear from Aaron during this talk with Pat McAfee on how free agency has been going for him.
I'm not going to get into specifics about every team that I talked to, but it was a few teams. There were a lot of teams I saw mentioned that I had absolutely zero contact with. I would say I did talk to Brian Daboll and had great conversation with him. Really enjoyed him a lot. I think he's a lot of fun to talk to and has a beautiful football mind. You know, him and Josh, he had Josh in Buffalo. Josh is one of my closest friends in the league. There was some other teams that I talked to, like I already mentioned, you know, KOC is a buddy of mine. And we talk during the season. So it was a cool experience. Obviously, I went out to Pittsburgh, tried to do that as quietly as possible. You know, a lot of people think that I'm desperate for attention, even though I haven't talked to you or anybody else in 3 months.
That is one of the things, or one of the gripes against Aaron I don't understand, is everybody says this guy's desperate for attention. And yet everything he does is try to isolate himself and get away from people. That doesn't make sense.
When he wants to be in the media, you'll definitely see him.
I think that that's how every athlete is, though, especially an athlete of his caliber.
And I also blame the media,
Right.
even including us. Anybody talks football,
Right.
They're talking Rodgers.
It's Aaron Rodgers.
Driving in this morning, who do you think unsportsmanlike was?
Right.
You know, obviously everyone's going to be talking about this interview for the next, you know, going into the draft, because it's how the dominoes will fall.
Right.
And it's really depending on what team he decides to play for is really going to affect how this draft, especially the first round and the you know, 3 quarterbacks we've talked about, on how they fall and how the future of certain teams are actually going to look like. Depending, I mean, you can give this guy a lot more power, because wherever he decides to play, if he plays at all, it's really going to benefit or, you know, make changes for, you know, teams like Pittsburgh, the Saints.
See, I see where you're going with that. I just don't know exactly how much quote unquote pull or power he's going to have. He's going into a brand new situation. It's not like he's going back to Green Bay. If he was still at Green Bay, I'd agree with you. But the guy hasn't built a rapport with any other team outside of Green Bay.
We'll say you're Pittsburgh's GM, or you're a week away from the draft and you don't know who your quarterback 1 is.
Right.
Their camp has already started, you know, at least their opening when sitting with players.
Right.
And you can't tell me that if Rodgers was to call them today and say, hey, I'm ready to play, I want to play over Pittsburgh, then that's totally going to change their war room on their draft board.
No, absolutely will. You're 100% correct on that. And that's why I believe like the Shador at 21 theory that's been going around, although possible, I think is not going to happen, only because I do believe Shador is going in the top 10, but also I just don't see Pittsburgh moving for a quarterback that quickly. But I think the Aaron Rodgers situation, from listening to this interview, and we can get into the more audio here in a second, but all of the McAfee show also was in the same spot as I, or at least the same mindset as I after this interview was over, which was if he plays football again, it's going to be the Steelers. There's no other team really that's in the conversation. The Vikings aren't in the conversation anymore. He's talking about teams that he never even had contact with. I assume that means the Saints, because I don't think the Saints knew about Derek Carr's injury up until a couple weeks ago, maybe.
They didn't. They knew about the injury. They didn't think it was going to extend into the season.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You're right. The severity of the injury.
And does that change it? I mean, that's the same thing with Rodgers. You know, that changes. A player like that is a captain of the team is really going to affect how you go into this draft next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just think that my theory of Rodgers waiting until we figure out what happens in the draft, I'm still going to stand by that one. He didn't say that was his thought process. In fact, he said that all he was doing was handling some personal situations, which it could 100% be factual.
Yeah, and I believe you're probably right, because Rodgers, you know, the media has pumped this guy up since the offseason.
And that's why I'm saying that the entire argument that he loves the attention, I don't think that's the case. I really don't. I think that we love to believe that because the media or sports media love to talk about certain players because of how polarizing
he's the one.
He is. For football, he's 100% the one. Much like Djokovic in tennis or LeBron in basketball. We love to talk about these guys, but are they really doing something dumb to put them out in that? The only time that I can honestly say that Aaron's done anything absolutely asinine to put himself in a negative light with media is the COVID thing. That's it. Like everything else, he's actually been a pretty steady and real person. Like just because he's wacky and does the ayahuasca and does stuff that society-wise we aren't okay with yet,
Yeah, but he's living in a whole different world than we are.
It's true, but that's the point, though. All athletes do. All celebrities do. You cannot compare your life to Aaron Rodgers's because it's nowhere near the same. In fact, if you've watched the Enigma documentary on Netflix, you would know that Aaron doesn't even talk to his own family because they estranged from him. They told him, you're becoming too big of a personality for us. Essentially, you're ruining the family name because of stuff that you're doing. While his brother then went on, what was it, The Bachelorette or something like that, won just for money, and then is no longer with the lady, but no one wants to talk about that. No one wants to talk about the negatives
Aaron.
within his, it's not Aaron. It's his family. So we're okay with his family being bad to him, but
he's easy to talk about. It's just like,
I know,
just like the draft's coming up, and names have you been hearing? It's Shador
and Cam
and Hunter and Cam. I mean, everybody pretty much knows it's Cam at 1. So the last 2 weeks, all we've heard when I'm prepping for the show, all the media outlets, it's Shador and Hunter.
Yeah.
But before we go to a break, this is what he had to say about talking to Pittsburgh and how this popping off the free agency talk.
I am trying to be open to everything and not specifically attached to anything when it comes to this decision. I'm not holding anybody hostage. I really want to emphasize that. Nothing about what I'm saying. I've been upfront from the beginning. I don't mean any disrespect to any player on their team, veteran or young guy that comes in. I don't think it was fair to the Steelers or anyone, to make a decision while I'm dealing with a lot off the field. So at the same time, I want to keep the lines of communication open. That's why I've talked to all the important people, and the people that need to know what's going on.
And that's all that needs to know. And I think that that's where we really need to find the line again, is we have to remember this is a personal matter for Aaron Rodgers to deal with in his own career. He, again, maybe have been waiting for a long time to get this done, but this free agency for NFL, we've argued as well, went too fast. Players signed way too quickly, and it caused it to become boring a little bit. And we lost it amongst the ether that is the world of sport for the last couple of weeks. And like you said, that has led us to only be able to talk about Shador and Travis.
And it brings up the story of, everyone thinks it's Rodgers holding teams hostage, but
right.
This guy has his own career to worry about, and it sometimes doesn't line up with the other team's calendars, whether it's draft time and we'll get into more of that with other comments after we hear more about Rodgers. But it seems like teams are like, well, it's Rodgers that's holding up everybody. Really.
I think that's just the easy scapegoat for people because it's one guy compared to an entire group of people.
It just makes it that more important than
absolutely.
And I don't really think he cares. It's really his decision.
Exactly. The man's 41 years old. You really
He's a
think
free
he
agent.
gives a dang?
Exactly.
And at this point, you could walk away from football altogether and still probably make the Hall of Fame, even though you've had a bad year and a half. I'll give him that. Not even year and a half. We can't even give him the year before that because he played one series.
And what'd you expect? It's the Jets.
Exactly. As we said yesterday, I'm not giving any quarterback that played for the Jets any grief anymore, or the Browns, because you know what? You played for the Jets and the Browns. You took a bullet for the world of football, and I will respect you for it, sir. That is the way I'm looking at it. I definitely have
way more respect for him now that he's not wearing the Jets colors.
Mark Sanchez, you're still going to get grief from me for the butt fumble, though. That's only because you're a Trojan and I expect more from you, but that is what it is. But we got to take a break real quick and pay some bills, my friend. We'll get into more of this conversation between Aaron Rodgers and the Pat McAfee show on the other side of the break, as well if we believe he will play football or if he will retire. So you're listening to the Early Bird Special right here on 101.1 FM, 1230 AM, ESPN Bakersfield, as well as streaming live on video on YouTube at the Early Bird Special. We'll be right back. No, I know we normally don't play the same band twice on the same day.
What did you Motorhead?
Well, I want more Lemmy, but we gotta play the game. We gotta play the game song today.
I already have it ready.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
Of course, I was thinking about, okay, what wrestling am I going to play for KG today?
It has to
And
be
then
the
I
game.
thought, who's going in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. We got to talk about the Hall of Fame inductees as well, including the natural disasters will be going in. Hopefully,
Big shout out to Typhoon after
Absolutely.
Burdick pulled his autograph card.
We are hoping that we could talk to Typhoon at some point. I was hoping that we could get him before the entire inductee ceremony thing, but actually, I think afterwards would be even cooler.
Yeah,
like
he's a
being
little
able to
busy
talk
this
about-
weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. He's probably right in the middle of Vegas right now, not even listening. But at this point, let's get back to what we were talking about, my friend. The Aaron Rodgers situation has come to a boiling point, essentially, as now we understand that Aaron Rodgers was not holding teams hostage from what he says. He was just dealing with some personal issues with people very close to him having issues that he was trying to help them through. And again, whether that's true or not, no one can say. I believe it to be true.
I
won't lie
just
to
don't
you.
understand why he would lie.
I know, exactly. And that's why this is also why I feel like there needs to be a little more transparency between teams and reporters. And in the sense of, it really could have been easily told to everybody that Aaron Rodgers came out and said, I want to sign, but I need to deal with some personal things first before going forward. Now, whether that is teams, sitting there thinking, is he contemplating retirement? Maybe, because I doubt he told anybody what the personal issues were, because it's nobody's business other than whoever is, a part of it. But why wasn't that explained? You know what I mean? Like, everybody's out here running around saying, oh, he's holding teams hostage. He's holding teams hostage. All he's trying to do is help a friend out in his personal life. Why is that such a bad thing? That's why it's like we villainize this guy way too much, in my opinion.
Well, it happens when he was in New York and as a Jet.
Yeah.
I think he's going to get a little more respect from people, and that's why I have to give more respect for shows like the Pat McAfee show, because you get to see the player on his own. It's not an ESPN where he's the who, what, when, where. He can be himself, and that's what I like about these interviews that he does with Pat. And I'll wrap up the Rodgers clips, but this is after Pat said, have you made a decision yet?
I said it all straight. I have no problem. Listen, from the jump, it's I'm in a different phase of my life. I'm 41 years old. I'm in a serious relationship. I have off the field stuff going on that requires my attention. I have personal commitments I made, not knowing what my future was going to look like after last year, that are important to me. And I have, a couple of people in my inner circle who are really battling some difficult stuff. So I have a lot of things that are taking my attention, and have beginning in really January away from football. And that's been where I've been focusing most of my attention on. To make a commitment to a team is a big thing, whether you're a first-year player or a 20-year vet.
That's absolutely true. And this is why I'm saying, like you said, Sparky, why would he lie? Why would he lie about this type of a thing? It's not his business to share anyway. And honestly, these things happen to us in real life all the time. I say real life as in like your life, the people listening to us right now. You all have personal things that happen all the time. But when it happens to athletes, for some reason, we can't accept that. We expect you to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's like these people have lives outside of the game. You have to accept that as well.
And we're going back to, where everyone thinks, 1 week, we think it's Pittsburgh. The next week, oh no, Carr's hurt. He's got to go to the Saints. And, even the talk with the Giants, but Goldhammer got into this, and his prediction is where Rodgers ends up.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be on a team in training camp. I don't think he wants to go to training camp. I don't think he wants to work. So what team is going to get their quarterback injured in week 2 that fancies themselves a potential division playoff contender? And Aaron Rodgers can ride in on a white horse named Buttercup and jump off the back with a week's notice, get a game flex to Sunday Night Football. Like, I think ultimately I do think he will play in the NFL again. I do not think he will be on a roster come the end of July.
That was a good, that was funny.
Buttercup
Is great. That's
I didn't catch that one.
That was fantastic. But no, okay. This is a good example of both sides of my argument, because Goldhammer saying that Aaron just doesn't want to work, that's a little ridiculous. Let's not attack this man's work ethic.
We just heard from him. He's obviously going through some personal stuff that he's trying to help out.
And it's not like he's just sitting at home. We saw him a couple weeks ago doing workouts with DK. So he's obviously getting throws in. Let's calm down on he doesn't want to work. He doesn't want to go to training camp. Stop it.
The dude's been playing for 20 plus years.
Yeah, let's relax, okay?
Sometimes, it's called the off season for a reason.
Yeah, and sometimes these guys can warrant taking 1 year off of training camp. Can we get over this entire thing that they have to be there? Now, I get it that like the first year you're with the team, 100% you should be in training camp because you need to build rapport or chemistry with everybody. But like if you're a 20-year vet, I'm pretty sure you can skip mini camp. It's not that pivotal. So let's calm down on that as well. But I do get his point that he may be waiting out just for the perfect situation. He may be waiting out just to, one, like he said, fix his stuff off the field so he can focus on the football game on the field. But let's not attack the guy's work ethic and say he just doesn't want to work. That's a little absurd.
And I'm sure we'll be reporting it as soon as we know more. And I think as we get closer to the draft, I think the picture will be a little bit more clear. But going back to the other side.
Yes.
So the Jets are a dumpster fire, and I don't think anything better. I like the signing of the new coach. I like Glenn as a coach. He's done plenty of things. He helped build that defense over in Detroit, but it also helped, when your head coach is a defensive minded guy like Dan Campbell. But I wanted to play this clip because it was Q Myers, and hearing from Rodgers, it made Glenn look so small, so little. How the way he ran out of the room and had to go get his HR. And
Aaron's entire exam or just description of Glenn during this entire day was just, I could not believe how small this man seemed.
But other reporters, see it in a different light. So let's hear from Q Myers.
Remember where Aaron Glenn came from. Dan Campbell actually did what a lot of coaches say they're going to do. We're going to change the culture. We're going to start changing our habits. Dan Campbell did it in Detroit. Aaron Glenn said this worked. We're going to go here and do this with the Jets. If I'm a Jets fan and I hear that from Aaron Rodgers, I'm doing a backflip right now. I'm excited because I feel like I believe him when he says he's changing the culture.
Okay, that part I believe, because that was actually going to be my point. Was we talked about this a couple weeks ago that if you really want to turn around your football team or really team in general, you have to build a culture and a winning culture at that, which obviously means you have to move on from the culture you have currently.
Maybe that works for both sides.
Maybe
agree. You could see the positive on both ends because Rodgers is getting out of the Jets dumpster fire, and it gives Glenn somewhere to build, somewhere to help build or change that culture.
Right. But that's kind of the point that I made at the beginning of this was let's also remember this is one side of the story. We'll most likely get Aaron Glenn's side of the story over the weekend, which will most likely not sound like the way Aaron Rodgers put it.
I'm excited to hear it.
I am too. I'm sure he's going to say that Aaron just dismissed him in the meeting and was just talking to the GM the entire time. That's why he had to break in to, make his point. There's going to be some sort of altercation to this story, but I do think that if this went down the way Aaron is saying it, or at least that's how he perceived it, this did not look good on the side of Aaron Glenn. Whether that is the full truth of the story, we'll find out, though. I always have to hear both sides of the story before I actually make a final say into what actually happened in these types of situations, especially business situations, because you never know exactly what could happen in these types of talks.
Well, we'll wrap up this segment. We'll come back, and Deion's back in the news.
Of course he is, because he has to defend his son, and I understandably so, because the last couple of days since this story has broke, the first thing everyone has said that we have talked to about this is, well, Deion must have had a hand in this. So we'll give you a breakdown of what's going on with that on the other side of this break. You're listening to the Early Bird Special on 101.1 FM, 1230 AM, ESPN Bakersfield, and streaming live on YouTube at the Early Bird Special. Welcome back. Gotta wait for that. I'm sorry. This is the early bird special. I'm Chris Burdick. That's Sparky. And as Sparky said before the break, Deion Sanders back in the news as, well, anybody knew he would be. He came out defending the Colorado Buffaloes' decision to retire Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders' numbers, essentially saying that the only reason we're talking about this is because of Shedeur. It's all because it's Shedeur. And it's not because Shedeur is so good, but it's because Shedeur is Deion's son. And that if it was anybody else, that nobody would have a problem with it. I've said my piece about this, Sparky, but are you still on the same bandwagon as I, that this is just poor timing?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like that. I mean, some view it as a quick turnaround with their careers, just ending in college, but there's also numerous big names in Buffalo's, lore of, including from the 1990 national championship team. But Chad Brown, another Hall of Famer, one of the, was it 5 before these guys? Had this posted on his social media. It says, if the players from the national championship team have not received such an honor, by default, this action dismisses, diminishes, and for a new generation of Colorado fans, erases their greatness. I would never minimize the impact of number 2 and 12, but they're amazing players, but the timing is poor.
It is, and it's just a really bad look. Obviously, Deion came out and is defending his son, saying that his son and Travis both deserve to have this happen. They do. No one is saying that they don't deserve this. We're just saying that to have it happen before they even got drafted is a little excessive. I mean, as you said, Sparky, we have players that were on a national championship team that haven't even been recognized yet. There is a line. And to jump over everybody does kind of insult them in the sense of history. And I know I said the other day, we're building a better Colorado Buffalo history in the terms of football, because, I mean, 122 years of history is a lot. But this is also kind of on your school for taking this long to retire some of these guys. Because, I mean, let's be honest, it's been 35 years since the national championship team. What's taking you long, Coach?
What's taking so long?
Like, I mean, why is this? What are you sitting on?
Even guys like Deion, maybe they need to push that into,
right.
the school. Like, what, why are you waiting 30 something years? We talked earlier, was it Salam that was 20, 30 years later until he got into the Hall of Fame? And I mean, for a team that's been around for 100 plus years, why is there only 5 numbers retired?
Right. And on the argument for Shedeur and Travis as well, just to point one out here, they did change Colorado's entire trajectory.
Oh, yeah.
They absolutely made it 180. I mean, honestly, if Colorado had Travis and Shedeur a little bit earlier, they probably would have got pulled into the Big Ten along with USC and UCLA. That's how big the program has grown. Not to mention Deion Sanders now staying on as your coach for a couple years. They pulled away a 5-star quarterback prospect who's arguably the best quarterback prospect coming out in this entire year from USC. So that should tell you something. So I get the impact that Travis and Shedeur have had on the entire program, along with Deion coming over.
And I'm sure it'll continue to grow like that when you're bringing in players like, Marshall Faulk in there to help coach. And I mean, they're going to be in the spotlight, whether they're a 500 team or.
I mean, shoot, for you wrestling fans, Goldberg's son is on this team. Gage is a fantastic linebacker too. It's really fun to watch. But again, it's just, I see more the history side of this, though. I think that they're right, especially with I forget about the 1990s championship team because I wasn't born at that time.
What?
But I wasn't born until 93. I
am old.
I'm sorry.
But before we bounce that, let's just hear it from Deion and we'll wrap that segment up.
Let's get the elephant out the room. I don't want to talk about this too long. I'm going to just talk briefly and let it go. We talking about Shedeur. We ain't talking about nobody else. But his last name wasn't Sanders, we wouldn't have this discussion. The only reason we were having this discussion is his last name is Sanders. Okay? That's it. It's been so many things accomplished at this university expeditiously. It's been unbelievable. And I think we should be appreciative. We should be thankful. We have a room full of wonderful people that covers us. And I don't know if you all were in this room 2-3 years ago. Some, I mean, very few. Okay, but I mean, it's a new day. We're doing things a little different. think the training table, I think the food is better. Nobody said nothing about that. It's a whole lot of things that are brighter and they're better because someone stands on business and makes it that way.
See, and that's what I'm saying. There could be arguments on both sides of this. He's right because him and his sons, both sons, including Shiloh, and Travis coming to Colorado obviously has changed the entire program and catapulted it into stardom. And people want to go play there now because Deion's connected to it. But on the other side of this, to sit there and pretty much take credit for all of the success of the program, all 120 years of it, is kind of a bad look too, because now you're dismissing everybody that came before you. And that's where people are going to draw the line. You can't dismiss history and what has happened in the past. That's just not how things go. So I just think that I think this needs to come down to the University of Colorado just doing this, biting the bullet. You've already announced it, so you can't take it back now. So at the spring game where they've already sold, I think, upwards of 15,000 tickets, they're going to do this. But as we just said a couple minutes ago, Sparky, let's get everybody else on this list too. Why do you only have 4 people's names down? Like, there should be multiple people. You may not have to retire their numbers or all of their jersey numbers, but let's at least retire the major ones. Cordell Stewart, for one.
Right.
How is that not retired? That's absolutely ridiculous. But again, this all comes down to the University of Colorado. Timing is poor, but you can make up for this. Just get it done, get it out of the way and out of everybody's eyes, and then, I don't know, retire more numbers. Let's get the history up in the rafters so Deion can't sit there and say that it's all because of him and his sons.
100%. I mean, that's look at this.
The end of the day.
I'm sorry, KG is here, and you'll
God.
see the video here shortly. KG will join us at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock. Text in anytime. We'll be talking wrestling, and that is a dope. Is that the old Ric Flair belt? You guys will have to see that here shortly. We'll have KG at the top of the hour here on the Early Bird Special, 101.1 FM.
12:30 a.m. ESPN Bakersfield, and streaming live on YouTube at the Early Bird Special. We'll be right back. This is probably my favorite Ice Cube song.
It is Good Friday.
Well, I mean, you can also play Friday though. Friday's a fantastic song.
It is a horrible song.
Welcome back to the Early Bird Special.
I personally like the America's Most Wanted version of Ice Cube.
True. Again, nothing beats the NWA version, but that's when he was at his tip-top peak, in my opinion. But when he went solo, it's a completely different monster. I'm Chris Burdick, that's Sparky. And before we get to our guy, 24 kg on the other side of this break.
I don't think that's the name he's going with.
No, but I'm going to let him, if you guys haven't seen the video yet, I'm going to let him introduce himself. But I can't do it without laughing at the moment. But real quick, let's get into some NBA since you will see some playing games starting tonight, this afternoon, really, at 3:30, right here on ESPN Bakersfield. I'm not sure which one is first, but the playing games go like this. You'll have the Atlanta Hawks at home taking on the Miami Heat. And on the west side, we got the Memphis Grizzlies at home taking on the Dallas Mavericks, potentially seeing the first ever 10 seed lock up the 8 seed, which is so weird to say. This is why I don't care for the play-in tournament whatsoever. But this could potentially be the first time ever that a 10 seed jumps up and snatches the 8 seed in the play-in tournament in its inception, or since its inception, I apologize. Sparky, out of these two teams, the Miami Heat or the Dallas Mavericks, which one do you think has a better chance of upsetting their opponent tonight?
I'm going to go with Miami.
I think you're right on that one. I like that pick because I don't know. Depending on how Ja Morant looks for the Memphis Grizzlies,
which is a game time decision.
Yes, it is. I still don't. I don't see him not playing tonight. The likelihood of him not being in this game is very minimal to me. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know how serious the injury was. I didn't catch the end of that game, but I know going back, the Heat and Hawks are the first game.
The Heat and Hawks are the first game at 3:30. Okay, fantastic. Which again, you can hear right here at 101.1 FM, 12:30 a.m. ESPN Bakersfield.
But I will say the Memphis and what is it?
Dallas Mavericks.
Dallas game, I think is going to be a hell of a game.
See, depends which Dallas team we get that show up.
I mean, and you can say the same thing about Miami too.
Absolutely. But again, Dallas is defensive-minded team now. God, Nico Harrison bugs me. And again, I love the promo that we just ran too. It escapes me what show it was. I think it was Freddie and Harry.
It was Amber and Ian.
Amber and Ian. He made a very good point. The Dallas fan base in Dallas, which is probably one of the most fickle fan bases outside of Philadelphia, they love Jerry Jones right now more than they love Nico. That should tell you a lot. That should tell you an awful lot. Even if the Dallas Mavericks somehow sneak into the 8 seed, Nico might still get fired. But something actually came to my attention, or at least I learned something while watching First Take the other day as Mad Dog brought it up. But apparently we give a lot of credit to Nico for this trade, but it was actually the owners. The owners wanted this trade done. The owners didn't want to pay Luka next year. So they take a lot of responsibility for this.
Why? I don't understand why.
I don't either. Adam Silver actually went on McAfee yesterday, another great poll for them, and said that he vouches for the ownership in Dallas, that all of these talks of them wanting to move to Vegas because they're connected to casinos down there and all that and blah, 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 blah. All of that is nonsense, that they have no intentions of moving Dallas or the Mavericks out of Dallas. I don't know. It seems to me that whomever is pulling the strings is either making incredibly, incredibly poor decisions, or they're making decisions based on emotion, and it's going to blow up in their face eventually. I know everybody keeps saying, well, we'll see how it ends when all of this is said and done. No, I think we can pretty much say how it's going to end right now. If you really believe that this Luka Doncic trade isn't going to work out better for the Lakers compared to the Dallas Mavericks, I'm sorry. I don't know exactly what you're looking at.
I think either team won't get past OKC.
Well, no, I'm not saying this year. I'm just saying the longevity of the trade.
Just looking forward to which team wins and who would they play.
Right.
Because I wanted to bounce that off you because I know you're a Cavs fan. And I know it'll probably be a sweep either way.
Well, I don't know about a sweep. It's very hard to sweep.
But which team would you rather Cleveland play?
Miami. I honestly would rather see Miami because I don't trust them to keep a perfect streak going. Essentially, I agree with what our buddy Snack said the other day, that they have the experience, obviously, and they're led by a great coaching staff. I just, it's to me, the easier route for Cleveland would be to go through Miami than it would be to go through Atlanta. But Atlanta doesn't really impress me either. Atlanta just has the possibility of Trae Young going off for 40, 50 points every night,
which I think we might see today, which we'll go
entirely
back to
possible
whatever
because
team
of
shows up.
Yeah,
but I wanted to use that to read two of these texts we just got in over the first hour, which you can text in anytime, 661-842-2000. The first one says Boston all the way.
Again, that's the growing consensus is everybody believes Boston's making it out of the East, which is a fair argument. They are obviously last year's champion. It's hard to doubt a champion, when they are equally as good as they were the year before. I just think that there are teams, including Cleveland, that have learned a lot from their losses last season and will be coming back in full force. And let's not forget that teams like Cleveland retooled and got a lot of really good players in the process. Boston still has the same people. We'll see how that works out for them in the long run. But I believe in Cleveland, obviously being a homer, though.
And this one's just goes back to the football. It says, are you guys going to be doing your own mock draft next week?
Honestly, I was thinking about that, or at least for the top 15 picks, since both of our teams are in the top 15. I don't think we got to go all the way to 30. Again, I've been notorious with 32. I'm sorry. Yeah,
that would still be.
I mean, again, it's just it's one of those things where I don't see this draft being a real deep draft or real exciting draft either. But I mean, why not? I mean, if you guys want to hear us do a mock draft, let us know. We could always do that next week, maybe on Thursday, right before the draft kicks off.
And watching NFL Live yesterday, I did see kind of the Mel Kipers and all of them saying that this draft isn't as big or full of the talent that they're expecting, but there is plenty of good talent in the second and third rounds.
Yeah.
So
it's what I keep hearing being referred to as a starter draft, a draft where you're not going to get a superstar out of this, maybe unless you're Tennessee or Cleveland, if you get Travis Hunter, whatever works for you. But you'll get maybe 1-2 solid starters that'll be on your team for the next 5 years. I think that is a fair statement. You'll get a handful of wide receiver 2 and 3s, maybe a good tackle or because this is a very good lineman and running back draft from what I understand. So you'll probably get a starter in those areas if your team's looking for that. But I wouldn't expect any like super flashy players to come out of this draft class. But then again, we've been surprised before. This draft for some reason is giving me the same vibe as the Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder draft. What, 2-3 years ago? No, it was actually longer than that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that that reminded me of the Brock Purdy.
Yes, the Brock Purdy spot, which actually I do want to hear this real quick before we go to break, if you still have it up, Spark. The Puka Nacua bite that you pulled, because Puka had his thoughts on what is going to go down with the Brock Purdy contract situation. I would love to hear what he said.
Brock Purdy, is he going to get a 5?
I don't think so.
Do you think he's going to go with a 4? It's going to start with a 4.
Yeah.
A high 4?
No. I think
mid 4.
Mid 4.
A 45?
I think so. I mean, I think
if he does that, that'd be smart for him and them.
Yeah. I mean, I think he seems like a smart guy. I think they have a chance to still be in their window. And I think if he goes for a 5, that the window closes.
I love it. I agree with him 100%. I think that the $40 million range is probably the safer range for him because, again, as successful as Brock Purdy has been, we have to see him without all the pieces to really determine if he should be in that upper echelon of quarterbacks, in my opinion. But that's just
it's just strange to see a player in a rival team talking about the Niners and their contract issues.
I know, but again, this was what we were wondering was going to happen.
Coming from that Brock Purdy that beat the Rams last season with the beat up team, but I mean Puka's Puka. I mean the Rams are almost dealing with the same issue going into the final years of Stafford.
Exactly, and we don't even know if Stafford's going to end his career with the LA Rams,
and it's going to be strange with no Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. Again, I that's going to be such a weird look with him in Seattle. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get used to that. There's no way. But we got to get to a break real quick, pay some bills. We got KG on the other side of this break. WrestleMania Night 2 preview. You're listening to the early bird special on 101.1 FM, 12:30 a.m. ESPN Bakersfield. Welcome back. Early Bird Special Hour 2, and it is time to talk wrestling because it is WrestleMania weekend, and we have our boy. He's pulling double duty for us, or I guess his alter ego is actually going to be filling in for him.
Like, is that KG?
I don't know, man. We got a mask on.
I don't know about this KG that you speak of unless it was that nice gentleman outside that got me this water. If you're wondering why I sound like the Macho Man, Randy Savage, it's because I'm possessed by the spirit of WrestleMania. Oh yeah, brother. Yeah. It's nice to meet you guys. I'm El Dorado Lobo, the Gold Wolf for non-Spanish speaking folks out there. I am your current IWC radio champion right here. And we're here to talk WrestleMania, boys. Woo, yeah.
He will defend that title for anybody who wants him to.
Yes. Aisle
That is a beautiful title.
right there. I will defend this next to Walmart in the back. Albertsons, aisle 6 next to the milk. I don't care where we're at, where we gonna get down the green.
This reminds me of
to the top, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. The for those of you who are listening on the radio, he has come with a replica WCW.
Replica? What do you mean? This is the real thing right here. I got this in the ring, brother. Oh, yeah.
It's heavy too. I've carried this thing before. It is very heavy.
That's what they all see. Oh, yeah, that's what they see. Oh, yeah.
I swear. All right, let's get into it real quick, boys. Should we start with SmackDown, or at least what we know is going to be happening tonight on SmackDown? Because
let's give it a go.
There's not a whole ton announced yet.
I didn't pull the clip, but Randy Orton came out yesterday, said he will be addressing
Are we ready to say he's appropriately
He can't
rated?
even keep a straight face when I got this mask on right
Dog, I don't think I can. That's why I'm not looking at you.
looking at me.
Make sure you go to the YouTube, to the
Yes.
podcast, Early Bird Special. We got a treat for you today.
It's
El Dorado Lobo in studio live.
It's fantastic.
Yo, brother, you know I'm right over here.
Anyway,
guys.
Okay. I got to center myself here, but no, I
Go
do
right
think that the appropriately rated Randy Orton, as we called him, is most likely going to get some sort of pre-opening match today. I don't think he'll get
Let
on
me
the
tell you
card
something
tomorrow.
about Randy Orton. He's a legend. Okay, he's a one-of-a-kind generational talent right there. Future Hall of Famer. He deserves his WrestleMania shine, brother. Gotta make sure this belt is in the
Do you
shot
think
right
it sets it up for a match tonight or this weekend?
I think honestly, this weekend, we'll see Randy Orton in some type of competition. I really do hope that this Kevin Owens injury story has been an angle, and he comes out and just thrashes Randy.
I sure hope
I would hope for the best, because we don't want to see a talent like Kevin
Mm.
Owens really injured, out of commission, because he brings so much to the product.
No, I agree with that. But I mean, again, injuries happen in this industry. So obviously you have to take them when they come.
Yeah, El Dorado's had a couple of knee injuries himself for getting up early in the morning and stubbing his
couple
toe
torn
there.
ACLs?
Yeah, torn ACLs. You know, I just will pop a vitamin and I'm right
Meniscuses?
back.
Menisci.
The menisci. You know.
But I do think, if you do think that it's going to happen this weekend, what night are you sliding that into? Because this is a stacked card as it is. As we already talked about, night one has what, 6 matches?
Well,
already
as we've
scheduled?
become to be accustomed, that Friday SmackDown is usually the matches that don't make the card on WrestleMania. It is the official pre-show now.
Which is why I think you'll see the tag titles put up tonight with
Most
the
definitely.
Street Profits against whomever is the number one contender.
I also saw, going away from Orton, but I also saw a post from Cross that wasn't too happy.
Oh, well, yeah.
That,
He's
he
also
wants a WrestleMania match, and
it's in his hometown of Las
Yeah,
Vegas.
exactly.
But see, I totally
And
forgot.
that's why I was going to ask you guys, what is this Bloodsport thing? he was talking about?
Bloodsport is at the same time.
I seen Natalia compete in that.
There's a ton of talents that are actually in that, because Natalia's in it. As we said, Karrion Kross is in it. Pete Dunne. Who's the?
I'm glad to see WWE loosening their contractual reins over their talent to let them appear in other.
I believe Charlie
organizations.
Dempsey's also a part of this as well. So basically, what people are asking, what is Bloodsport? If you've seen the movie Bloodsport, no, people are not dying.
No,
but
at
this
all.
is probably the closest thing you can get to Bloodsport without it being a deadly blood sport. It is essentially a just combat match style tournament between a whole bunch of very known wrestlers or combat fighters that actually have experience. Like, the people in these tournaments are the ones that actually know how to fight. And
Jiu-jitsu, other martial arts, Muay Thai, boxing.
But from what I understand, it's really just reserved for the people you see on TV.
The grapplers.
Yeah, the wrestlers that you see, that, you know, the ones who teach the wrestlers actually how to wrestle.
I was just thinking, because it would have been cool to see, I know it's short notice, but it would have been cool to see kind of how they set up with Orton and throw in Cross.
Well, you know, El Dorado, he wrestled a bear on his 11th birthday right there to get this title right there. You didn't know it.
You've held it since you were 11.
Since I was 11 in Bloodsport right there. Had to wrestle a bear.
Well, before we move into WrestleMania, we would have to bring
Game Triple H Hall of Famer.
So the Hall of Fame has been announced. I know that we also have a handful of matches that are going in, but we did not mention that the game himself, the guy who runs the whole show,
whole shindig.
And I love his humility with all of this, because Paul Levesque, the guy who essentially is now the new Vince McMahon of the WWE since Vince's departure from the company, former professional wrestler, longtime fans will know him as Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Terrorizing.
That's how I remember him.
Amongst other really, really, really bad names and
Terrible
gimmicks
creative back
that were given to him. But I love how humble he was about all of this. And I don't know about you guys, because he didn't want to do this. He didn't want to put him. He didn't want to go into the Hall of Fame.
Can you imagine how busy he is coordinating WrestleMania,
Well,
and then has to prepare for a Hall of Fame induction speech as well?
But it's more of, he's the boss now.
Yeah.
So it makes him look like he's putting himself in.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want that at all. Like, so this was something that was completely unknown to him. It was forced upon him. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I think that's a really nice sign of humility.
I think that, yes, the humility in this position is very important. It shows a side of him that most people might not be familiar with, and his contribution behind the scenes to WWE, what it's been through, where it's at, and where it's
He's
going
essentially
right now.
built the entire roster as it
Right now,
sits.
over the last several years, I'd say we're seeing the fruit will actually start to blossom before it actually becomes ripe. with WWE and the hand-picked talent that Triple H and Sean Hickenbottom have put together.
For those that don't know, that's my good friend HBK over there. You know, we're dropping governments today. Oh,
Sean Hickenbottom. No one ever calls him that name.
the old Hickenbottom. Yeah.
No, and it's fantastic to see because I think you're right. Most of the roster, at least the young part of the roster, you can see today was all grown and groomed by Triple H and NXT years ago, in which you'll see the next generation be brought up by HBK. But it's interesting to see that D-Generation X, which was the faction known by everybody as the anti-corporation, the
crotch chopping, and profanity and slanging, and all kind of things,
doing whatever they want to do, kind of a thing, not listen to the boss, become the bosses of this entire company. That's really odd and ironic to think about.
Yeah,
but
it is.
Other names that are obviously going into the Hall of Fame that we should mention, as we said, the natural disasters, I apologize, are going
Earthquake and typhoon, tugboat.
Yeah.
What were the matches that were actually announced as well? I know there was a Rock match that was thrown in there. Did you have that list still?
For the Hall of Fame matches?
Yeah.
You've got Bret Hart and Stone Cold and Bret Hart for their WrestleMania. Which one was it? 9?
I believe it. Yeah, it was one of the early
ones where we first became aware of what a double turn would look like.
Right, which honestly might be a little bit of a foreshadowing of what you see in night 2 of this entire thing, right?
I honestly believe so, with
championship implications and conversations on the line.
So is that something they're going to announce every year now?
What, the Hall of Fame
matches?
Yes.
Yeah.
This has been added to the Hall of Fame induction ceremony.
Which honestly is probably long overdue, because if you're a wrestling fan, or if you at least have watched it, I believe, I mean, we all love the wrestlers themselves, but it's usually the matches that are the most memorable part of all of this.
Do you think they did this to one-up Dave Meltzer's 5-star rating protocol that he puts out in his magazine that most people wouldn't agree with?
No.
Because a Hall of Fame inducted match seems more important than a 5-star reviewed match in some guy's magazine who has controversial information over the last couple of years.
I could see I could see the argument for that, but I don't think
the
so.
dirt sheets.
Because I don't think, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Dave Meltzer is a longtime wrestling journalist who essentially watches these matches and gives them a rating from 0 to 5 stars, depending on how good and memorable the match is. 0 obviously being trash, 5 being absolutely legendary, something that can never be replicated. And honestly, in the wrestling world, and this is why I don't believe that's the case, no one cares. No one that actually is behind the scenes cares about Meltzer's 5-star rating. In fact, it's most of the time seen as a joke by most of the people who actually are important to the industry. So no, I don't think that's the case at all. I think this is them just giving the credit where it is due to these athletes who put on memorable moments for all of us to remember for the rest of our lives.
Which was WrestleMania 13. And the other inductees, along with Triple H and the Natural Disasters, was also Lex Luger.
Lex Luger, that's right.
And Michelle McCool.
Lex Luger, obviously the guy who was really going to be the face of the entire company until he left for WCW out of nowhere, causing the beginning, I believe, of the Monday Night Wars, really.
The acquisition wars.
Yeah, at least that part of it all, with Hulk Hogan and all of those guys departing. And it's really cool to see, though, that the WWE at least is not holding grudges against a lot of these guys. And I think you saw it with the Steiners first, when they really took them off of their list of like not really wanting to mention the Steiner brothers at all with everything that ended there. But they're really starting to accept wrestling as a whole.
Never say never.
I mean, that's very true. But at this point, I think that's the most we're going to see of the Hall of Fame inductees from this weekend. Those are the major ones. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see the roast of WrestleMania, which
super unfortunate.
I still think that's going to come out on YouTube at some point, or Netflix maybe, if they decide to, like, because Kill Tony is.
I think Netflix might acquire it.
Tony Hinchcliffe, the host of Kill Tony, will be the one running the whole thing, and this is gold, man. Like, there's no way you don't release this to the public, because that is ratings gold, in my opinion.
Definitely.
But let's get into night 2 of WrestleMania.
Well, we'll see. Day 1 we'll have 7 matches, and as of we're looking at, there's 6.
Oh, so there could be a slide in there for day 2. I didn't realize that. Also, it was announced as well that day 1's opener will be Jey Uso and Gunther.
Nice.
I don't know how I feel about that, though.
Look, you got to set the tone for my brother with a yeet.
No, I get it. I get that.
You got to understand how he's coming out the mud and how he's doing this for his family. Can I get a yeet?
No.
No, you can't. The
All
computer said
right.
no
well,
this
I
time.
guess he's
Too
losing.
many yeets.
I
Too
guess
many
he's
yeets.
I guess he's
I'm
yeeting out the
kinda-
ring. He's losing.
I've been yeet enough. You
Have
know
you
what
really?
I mean? I
All right,
think
now this is the
we talked
complaint that
about
a lot of
that.
people are having right now.
Uh-huh.
They're feeling like the lack of importance with Jey Uso's win in the Royal Rumble and not being in the main event, now being, I'm not going to say bumped down, but a curtain match, opening and setting the tone for WrestleMania, which I think is at a great spot if it's not going to be the main event. A lot of people have a problem with this.
Right. And again,
I personally like it.
you like the
I
fact
think
that
it's going to be a hell of a match.
Yeah.
They've set it up, and I think it's just going to kick off the whole thing.
I know, but how do you feel the
great
fact?
position.
How do you feel about the fact that they're not the main event anymore?
I just don't. I can
It doesn't
care less,
matter.
really.
Yeah,
I
honestly,
think how
with
the
way this-
matches with 14 matches, I think the whole thing is pretty much
It's
a main
stacked.
event match everywhere.
No, that's fair. Absolutely
Yeah.
fair. WrestleMania should mean that
great
way.
solid builds, and I want to just point
Well-
out the build of Naomi and Jade Cargill, because that's a nothing match with nothing on the line, and it has a better build than certain matches that have championships implicated.
Like
in
the Priest and McIntyre one's kind
Come
of
exactly. You know, they,
And those
they
are
picked
two-
it up, they dropped it here and there. You know, how much TV time have certain matches gotten the build to implicate importance on them for this WrestleMania? It is stacked. We know there's going to be banger after banger, but you know, is it quality versus quantity in this instance of WrestleMania?
I would agree with you if we were talking about last year's Mania. This year's Mania doesn't have that pull to me. There are multiple
I felt like
matches.
last year had a different intensity to it than this year.
Yeah, and there was different build up. You had The Rock coming back and the
You still
whole
had
fight
Vince
with the
some type of
bloodline.
control.
Yeah. And with this year's Mania, there are multiple matches on this card on both nights where I'm like, this shouldn't be here. Like, to be honest with you, and again, just throwing these out there, the tag match between the New Day and the War Raiders
Night one.
does not need to be there. Rey Mysterio and El Grande.
That could have been
Friday.
Yeah.
Rey Mysterio and El Grande.
I think the
really
Naomi one
That could have been Friday.
could have been Friday. I'm gonna say honestly, I agree with you that the Damian Priest and Drew McIntyre
Could have
one
been
could have been
Friday.
Friday. Like, there are a handful of matches that really if I'm really gonna be honest, Tiffany and Charlotte.
Could have been Friday.
I'm looking forward to that one.
That one's not. I don't know.
Hey,
Dude,
look,
there's something about that
I
one.
hate
I'm
to
just not
sound
excited.
messy. I hate to sound messy, but much like everybody else, the build was not there. The electricity was not there until they got personal, which maybe it was a shoot, maybe it was a work. But once it added that kind of little dash of excitement to it, I think everybody wants to see how this match is going to turn out, just for the simple sake to see if Charlotte can actually do business professionally and put someone over, because it seems like she has a problem doing that.
No, she did that a couple years ago with Rhea. I can't accept that.
If you look back at it,
I
man,
can't accept that at all.
There has been instances where this woman has problems putting people over.
That's fine.
I'm more worried about SmackDown and not it being a snore fest. I'm hoping that, because the last few, it's just been, all right, it's just throwing in seasoning into WrestleMania. So I'm hoping this Randy Orton thing, I think there's going to be some curveballs thrown in tonight that'll lead up to WrestleMania. But before we, run out of time, let's go down this fight card for night 2. Let's start with AJ Styles and Logan Paul.
Banger.
You think so?
Banger, bro.
I know we've all talked about Logan winning that one, but
this is where I feel like if you were going to put Karrion Kross into any match, it would have been this one.
honestly.
Because there's a build-up with AJ. Obviously, and I think Karrion's not on the card because of the Bloodsport thing, because it's going at the same time, and that's why Natty's not on the card either. But I think I agree with you. I think this is going to be an underratedly good match.
And then that goes into the Sin City Street Fight, Damian Priest versus Drew McIntyre. Which, can you break down what the hell is a Sin City Street Fight? Is it just going to be Vegas fight?
I think they've
fight
got
down
a
the
set.
strip.
I think they've got a set designed, a breakaway set, something that's going
Probably.
to look like. We're going to see this Las Vegas City Street Fight, Sin City Street Fight, featured on WWE 2K. I would almost bet my mask and identity and livelihood on it, but I would have a strong feeling that this is something to be featured on the video game that ties into why this match is even.
Will it be
on the
live?
card.
Is it pre-recorded?
It'll be pre-recorded.
Yeah, more likely pre-recorded.
So we can blur out my face.
Well, then we'll go into the Intercontinental Championship, the Fatal 4-Way with Braun, Dominic, Penta and Finn Balor.
This is the most underrated
I'm
match
going
in my opinion.
Dom.
Definitely. I'm going
I
with
think
Dom.
we're all going Dom, but I
Which is
really want
surprising.
to see Braun win.
Yeah.
For some
I
reason,
wouldn't be surprised if Braun retains, but he doesn't need a title now. We could put this on someone else.
not even just that, but you take a title off of him and say Jay wins night one, you have an instant triple threat to 4-way between Jay, Gunther, Braun, and Punk.
Woo! This man is cooking.
He's been on one this morning.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I
brother.
wouldn't.
I see how you got the coffee steaming right there in the cream rising.
You don't see. I mean, I can look at all four of the guys and see a story where any of them could win,
right.
and just drag it out because whether it's the Judgment Day with Finn and Dom, stretching this story out, or Penta has been on fire since he got into the WWE. So I can also see him.
It could land on any one of them.
Exactly.
Penta could get it just because of the hype he has currently, but I think Triple H has shown us in the last year that just because you have hype coming in doesn't automatically put a belt on your shoulder.
As a former wrestler, he probably wants to pay off, the players that have been putting in the work.
Especially the Dom Mysterios who have literally been putting
what's
in
been happening
300.
with Charlotte Flair her whole career. Every time she gets hurt, comes back. It's like Charlotte in the bank with her. I'm just saying.
I
feel like it was the wrong choice for her to win the Women's Royal Rumble. But we can move on.
Me too. I could say the same thing. But the Women's Tag Team Championship, my girls Liv and Raquel against Bailey and Lyra.
If they take these belts off and do this the second year in a row, where a new tag team that was never formed comes in and randomly wins the tag title, no. That's my problem right now, is that you've taken this entire year to build a incredible tag team division in SmackDown, and then you throw the two tag team divisions that no one gives a dang about in WrestleMania. Why? Explain that to me.
They fumbled this one, bro. I'm going to just keep it real with you.
This match makes no sense.
For some reason, the women's tag titles move differently than the men's when it comes down to draft season, okay? They're defended on all brands.
When is draft season?
Which
right after the Mania,
basically. Okay. Now the only real tag team in this division is Candice Carter. What's the Caden and Candice?
No, I'm sorry. That's the Katana.
Yes, the dancing, the clubbing
Katana
chicks.
Chance and what the heck is the other girl's name? I know who you're talking about.
They've been solid and multi-time women tag team champions in NXT.
The Party Crew.
They hold it down. They work cohesively. They look great performing they are the only real tag team. Everybody else is makeshift in this division.
Right.
So my thing is, why don't we just go ahead and make the men's title move across all brands, even if they're separate? We unify them, we break them apart. We've done it before.
Yeah, but they're not going to do that so quickly after they just made new ones.
Or just establish real women's tag teams, or just dissolve the belts.
You just need to split the belts again.
Just dissolve the belts.
You need to make it just like the men's, where the women have their own versions of it. It's Caden Carter and Katana Chance.
There we go.
The pair that you were trying to think of.
Thank you very much.
No, I agree with you though, because they're the only two that I've seen that actually have a cohesive work that they flow well together.
Yes.
Everybody else is just spastically put together. Well, I guess Liv and Raquel work, but they still haven't looked like they did the first time before both of them went on injury leave.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost about time for them to split.
I think the entire Judgment Day is going to split. That's why I think with Dom winning this title, you're going to get the beginning of
Dom or Finn winning it.
Yeah, you're going to get the beginning of that entire group just splitting.
I personally, I'm a big Dom fan, but I could also see Finn taking it, and then Dom, usually he'll pull it off from here, and because this argument over the Judgment Day has just been for the last month or so. I was like, just pull the plug already.
The passive aggressiveness of all of it too has been very, I don't know, out of character, I guess the best way to put it.
I miss the old Judgment Day.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the point though. I think that's what they wanted from all of this.
It got to, like, when they had Truth in there, we knew it was getting very far from what it is originally intended to mean, represent, and it made great television. But once Carlito and JD and then this infighting, I think it's had a good run.
Yeah, no, it's
Judgment
time
Day
for
has
it
had
to...
a great run, and now it's time to, because honestly, I'm seeing all these hints every time Finn's on screen or they're in the clubhouse of Bullet Club memorabilia. So hopefully we get some type of branch of Bullet Club coming out.
Here's I'm glad you brought that up because I think you're going to get that, especially with AJ Styles no longer being in a faction. You got Cody Rhodes who's going to be looking for help here pretty soon. And honestly, you have a good amount of the founding members of Bullet Club, which for those of you who, again, don't understand what we're talking about here, Bullet Club is one of the longest running factions across wrestling as a whole. It was actually created back in, 90s?
Early
2000s,
early
2000s
in Finn Balor
in New Japan when he was over there, and AJ Styles, Tama Tonga, many others have been a part of this faction.
The GODs, the Gorillas of Destiny.
It is arguably the most lucratively, probably just the most lucrative faction outside of WWE ever created. It is, you'll see pictures. I mean, people walk around with Bullet Club t-shirts, not even knowing it's a wrestling thing.
I feel like it's the illegitimate child of the NWO.
Little bit. But I mean, the creation of that, the WWE has not had any problem doing that in the past. They've taken independent things that have been from other industries and bought it and just ran with it themselves. I think you're going to get that very soon. Genuinely do.
Well, then we get back into the fight card for night 2, the Women's World Championship triple threat with Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, and Bianca Belair.
I know we all said Rhea the other day.
I really hope it's Io.
I would like to see Io retain. I wouldn't mind that, but let's just call a spade a spade. Mommy's going to be forever hot. Breaking the internet, slamming people down on their backs, going out there, commanding attention, charisma exuberating off of this woman. Hey, all props and respect to Bianca, but I think they're setting her up for some type of storyline or build with the winner or outcome of this Naomi and Jade Cargill situation.
Yeah, as we said on Tuesday.
Now, hear me out when I say this. Whatever happens with this women's tag team situation, I feel like Lyra's going to have to drop this IC title to somebody with a namesake in order to, same thing. Now, not to say Chelsea Green's done a bad job with what she's done, but these mid-card women titles have to be elevated by
There's a
someone
reason
who's
they're not
had an
on,
established career in WWE for it to be taken important.
There's a reason they're not on the card.
Much like 7 years old, wrestle the bear. You see how I got this?
You brought her name up. Why are we seeing Chelsea?
Because again, these mid-card titles have just been flat. There's nobody built up for her. There's nobody to fight her besides Zelina Vega, and they don't honestly think that's going to be a good enough match. And I agree with them 100%. So how many more matches we got, Sparky?
We got one more. The last one is the WWE Championship with Cody and Cena.
I have to stand by my statement. I see Cena walking away with the championship at the end of this.
I would hope.
Leading to,
I still think it's going to be Cody.
Again, Star Wars of the WWE. We're headed into Return of the Jedi. And what better way for him to return than to lose his arm, ergo championship.
There we go.
And come back to win it again from him somewhere down the line before December is over. Or maybe The Rock betrays Cena at the end of this entire thing, takes the belt from him, and he has to win it from The Rock.
There you go.
But God only knows.
There's going to be some type of twist, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it on Tuesday when KG returns, and we'll be able to talk about the crazy Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, which is
always the
Raw after WrestleMania.
But I was going to ask before you
go for it. Sami Zayn return?
We talked off the air a little bit, but you see Sami.
Maybe Sammy's Randy's opponent. Maybe that's who comes back and fights him, and then
4KO.
Yeah, 4KO.
You know, it's more of a tribute match than it is a storyline.
But it's at least it's an opponent that's an actual opponent for Randy.
There you
go.
go.
And then real quick before we get out of here, because we got 2 minutes left, I have a question for the both of you. Since the best part of wrestling, in my opinion, is them pulling something over on us, getting something that we didn't expect. What's one thing that you guys are hoping happens that the world is not expecting in this weekend's WrestleMania?
Go ahead.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yeah, I've already asked you this question.
Two things. All right. One, I hope the storyline with Kevin Owens is just a work and he comes back and he's fine. Okay. That's the first thing. Second, I would like to see Seth Rollins team with Paul Heyman and Paul Heyman turn on Roman and CM Punk.
So you want this entire internet rumor to be true?
Why not? Why not? It doesn't have to be true, but you know what? Shake things up, change things around.
I did see a Seth Rollins interview yesterday where he was talking about, someone asked him, who would walk him down when he gets into the Hall of Fame, and he said his tribal chief.
Oh, of course.
So
because Brock ain't going to do it anymore.
This
Look, I
one
don't
set
know if
it up
that's
perfectly.
petty or if that's a compliment, but that's crazy right there.
Imagine
Like
them
a day or
both
two before
walking
they
down.
fight.
Oh my goodness, man. Well, they will always be forever linked in their careers, especially in WWE. Now, I'm just saying there's no chance of this ever happening anytime soon. But one day we could possibly see a John Moxley return to the WWE later on in his career.
It's going to be ways
and
down the
that
line.
would be something to really shake the bag at.
Yeah, absolutely. Sparky, did you have anything else?
I mean, he kind of took the one I'm a big Kevin Owens fan, so if
You're hoping Kevin comes
I'm
back?
hoping if it's just a story, I'd love to see him and use this as, I mean, he's great at these stories. So that's why everyone's like, is he really hurt? Is he blah, blah? And I don't like Randy Orton, so I would love to see somehow KO come out, and whether that's tonight or WrestleMania. And I would also like to see Cody get it over on Cena, just because.
Yeah. Well, again, you might be able to see your first title run with Cena, though.
But Seth Rollins fan, I'm always going to go for Seth Rollins. So I'm hoping he pulls it out. I'm not a big fan of him and Heyman just because of all the stories, but I can understand as a wrestling fan, all the stories almost ran out with CM Punk, and it would be even better to see him and CM Punk feud. So that's what I got. What you got?
I could see that. I mean, I said my two pretty much on Tuesday. You can go back and watch our video on YouTube, but I do believe you'll get the return of Malachi Black during that Rey Mysterio El Grande Americano match, which will set up him pretty much challenging pretty much challenging all luchadors across the board.
All
in
the
WWE,
luchadors across the board. Yeah.
and probably going down the line with that one. Oh, we didn't talk about oh no, that was night one, wasn't it? LA Knight and Fatu. And then my other one will most likely be, I would love to see what I said on Tuesday happen, which is Paul Heyman essentially sell his soul to save Roman and Punk by getting The Rock involved in that somehow, and having Seth take the pin, because that's essentially what's going to happen.
One more match I'm looking forward to is a match behind the abandoned Kmart. If you guys want to come and support El Dorado Lobo, about 7 p.m. Okay, kids, bring your parents, and parents bring protection. All right.
We appreciate your time, KG. And thanks for doubling up. Everybody look forward to the WrestleMania. We'll do our recap next week.
Yes.
And we've got Bolt Brady coming up. We'll talk the NBA playoffs and how you can make some money this weekend.
Make some money.
Right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM. Welcome back to the Early Bird Special. And if you hear that music, you know what time it is. Our boy Bolt Brady's back with his picks for the NBA play-in and playoffs. Good, sir. How are you?
Morning, fellas. What's happening?
Not a whole ton, sir. It's WrestleMania weekend. We're happy over here. Just got done with our wrestling breakdown, but obviously there's plenty else happening in the world of sport. So how are you feeling going into the play-in? Did you make any bets on the first couple games?
I did. I took the Warriors on the money line. I thought they were giving up a little too many points, and sure enough, they were. So the money line worked out well there.
Fantastic. And anything
I'm looking forward to
Eastern,
WrestleMania because my Bulls got eliminated, and I can move on now.
Just about to let you pass on that one, but I mean, if you want to bring it up, I mean, how did you make any bets on the Chicago Bulls game, or did you not want to touch that one?
No, I didn't touch that one, and luckily, wow, that was embarrassing.
Yes, it was.
It's hard though when you don't have a star. That's why I'm telling you, Sparky, you got to make some moves here. Maybe go for Kevin Durant. He's available every year, so who knows? Who knows? But sir, I got actually a couple questions for you. Do you know anything about the betting side of the awards and stuff like that, like the probabilities of them winning MVP and stuff? And do you make any bets on those?
So that's a good question. I don't follow those too much.
No.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know people. Like when you do it at the beginning of the year, the reason why I don't touch it too much is because you lock your money up for the entire year.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and obviously you would have to predict it long term in order for it to actually make more money for you, I suppose.
And then you're also hoping that no injuries happen, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So that's why I was curious, because I know right now a runaway candidate for the MVP at least is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, thanks to how well the Thunder have done all year long. So I didn't know if maybe you have heard any others that could potentially make a running for some of these other awards, like maybe the Defensive Player of the Year.
No, I do think that, speaking of Shai, that it's kind of unknown that he actually second in the NBA in steals.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, OKC, I was doing some research on it. It's pretty nutty what they did this year. The second seed in the West, they beat them by 16 games. That's the most ever in NBA history. And then also they won 51 games this year by double digits.
Right. I think they said that their margin of victory is one of the highest, I think, in NBA history. So, I mean, that's why everybody believes. I'm not 100% sold on them making it all the way to the finals, but I definitely see them getting out of this next play-in that we're going to talk about right now, since we'll just get into it. How do you feel about this whole Memphis Grizzlies against Dallas Mavericks game? And do you think that Dallas could potentially be the first 10 seed to slide in as an 8 seed?
Possibly. I mean, Memphis they don't impress me. I mean, to be honest, all the games tonight, all the teams, they don't impress me. And that's the reason why they're in the position that they are. But, Dallas did look good the other night, so I think they do have a chance.
I have to agree with you. I have not really been excited about what Memphis has done the end of the year, at least, especially with the firing of their head coach. But like I asked you last week, when you go into these things, looking at these 4 teams and saying none of these really impress you at all, does that affect your betting lines at all, or where you're going to go with your money?
Well, it does, because I just don't force a play, right? I mean, it's fun to have action on games, but after you do your research and you're looking at the teams and you don't like anything, nothing's wrong with staying away from the games,
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's obviously good advice for anybody out there who's a sports bettor and just can't seem to not put money down on a specific game. So I don't know. I've seen a lot of people put down on these games that I also agree with you. I just don't see a lot happening in them, and they're not really impressive. So I don't know who to really ride with. But who do you feel like is going to make it out of these 8 seed play-in games? And who's your long-term pick for the playoffs?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the plays that I like the best is you can get the Timberwolves versus the Lakers plus 1.5 games, right?
Ooh.
So if they lose the series by just 1, you still win, and it's minus 130. And I think that's good odds. I like the T-Wolves there. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually won the series, but I'll take the plus 1.5 on the game there. And then also I'll do the exact same thing in the Bucks-Pacers series. You can get the Bucks at plus 1.5, minus 160. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if they won that series as well.
Do you think with Lillard back that kind of changes the pick?
I mean, if with him back, yeah, I mean, that helps even more. But I mean, when he was gone, the Greek Freak still averaged 30, 12, and 8. I mean, what I look for, guys, in the playoffs is you have to have that superstar because they just take over in the playoffs. So each team usually has, one, but I'm talking about the superstars, the Greek Freak, Anthony, and then can they play defense when they need to? Can they protect the rim? Because sometimes those games just come to a screeching halt, and it's the teams that can D up that and have a superstar that usually do well.
Which that leads into the question I had for you this week is, with the Warriors matched up with the Rockets and, with buckets, looking like playoff Jimmy, how do you look at that series?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because my boys are huge Warrior fans. And so when they were watching them in the regular season, they're like, Dad, how come Jimmy's not scoring?
It's not playoffs yet.
Yeah, he's not even. I go, guys, just hold your horses here. Wait until the playoffs come. And sure enough, the first play-in game comes and Jimmy scores 38, right? And so you're like, there he is. So I think they are very intriguing. The only thing is remember in Rocky 3 when Clubber Lang was going against Rocky and he was just really hungry and Rock had already been there, done that. The Warriors give me a little bit of that feel. I mean, I think they'll take care of business, but I don't think the Rockets will be an easy way out. I think they have a little bit of that Clubber Lang in them.
I like that. I mean, I know a lot of people are picking the Warriors to upset the Rockets this year because of how young they are. I am one of those people, to be honest with you, just because I know experience kills in the playoffs. Is there anybody else underdog-wise you're looking at right now?
I think maybe on an individual game basis, like if I look at all these series, I don't think any one of them has a sweep. I think each team, even Detroit and the Magic, I think will be able to win games. I do think that the Nuggets are probably in trouble. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't get out of the first round. I just don't think they look very good. Of course, the Joker looks good, but the rest of the team, they are the Jokers. Like MPJ, I mean, he's terrible. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Clips come out of that. But I think each team can definitely win a game in every series.
I love that pick because the Clippers have silently been the hottest team in basketball too. I think they're on a 9-game winning streak or an 8-game winning streak or something like that. So I was thinking the exact same thing, my friend. But Sparky, do we have any text for Bolt at all, or is that it?
No, that was the one before was he has the Celtics and wanted to see what Bolt thought about the Celtics taking the whole thing.
So it's funny because I was sitting here and I think there's probably 4 teams that can win the whole thing. But if we had a draft, and I went first, and they said, hey, you get to pick which team you want to represent, I would pick the Celtics. If I had the first pick of a draft between all of us, I would take the Celtics. I still think, they're the ones to beat, but I don't think they're invincible. I think there's several teams out there I think even the Bucks could cause some noise, and the Warriors. I mean, if they get going, they've got the best player, on the planet. And then, his sidekick now, Jimmy's not too shabby. So, but if I had to pick one, I would take the Celtics.
Well, we had one more text that just came in, and this was something that we didn't prep you on, but they wanted to know if Bolt has a favorite to win the Stanley Cup this year.
So, you know what? I don't follow hockey very much and I asked my mom, because I'm kind of like a physical guy growing up. And I said to my mom, I said, how come I didn't play hockey? And she said she hid the registration form.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Good mom.
She's trying to save you a trip to the dentist is what it was.
Well, you're right. She said
you got a pretty mouth. She wanted to save them teeth.
Yep. So football was enough for her. She said hockey was too much.
I completely understandable. It's one of the most dangerous sports I've ever known, so I wouldn't touch it either. But if that all we got, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, we appreciate your time. We'll obviously be talking to you very soon with the NBA playoffs just getting started. And this is Bolt Brady and his bro. Check him out, boltbradyandhisbro.com. Plus, his podcast is available on all major podcast platforms, man. Have a good Easter weekend, and we appreciate you taking the time out each week.
All right, take care, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. We got to take a break real quick and go pay some bills. You're listening to the Early Bird Special on 101.1 FM, 1230 AM, ESPN Bakersfield, and streaming live on video on YouTube at the Early Bird Special. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the early bird special.
This is my favorite one.
I know you played this yesterday.
I'm gonna play it all week if I wanted. This one and the first full album.
Oh yeah,
I can't listen to everything else after that. Once they started singing
Y'all
singing along
just-
songs, I couldn't do it.
First, there are plenty of amazing songs in Meteora.
You're a little biased when it's your favorite band.
Minutes by Midnight, or Minutes to Midnight.
The videos are way different than the music.
They absolutely are. But real quick, it is Friday, so Sparky, let's let them know, what are you watching this weekend, my friend? Besides WrestleMania, that's the low hanging fruit. We all know what we're watching this weekend.
And depending
and
on
NBA playoffs and all of that stuff. Non-sport. What
depending
are we watching?
on how much mac and cheese I eat this weekend. And big congratulations to all of our listeners that won some tickets. We will see you tomorrow at the 10th annual Mac and Cheese Fest.
Yes, come by the ESPN tent. We'll pour you a beer.
From 2 to 6 p.m. at the Kern County Fairgrounds. But kicking off today, I'm going to go watch Sinners over at the
the new Michael B. Jordan vampire.
It looks
film.
awesome, and I got the D-Box ticket, so I'm hoping it's good
You
enough
and the
that it'll shake.
D-Box,
I love the
man.
D-Box movies, and since I can't drive to LA every Friday when movies come out, I go with the D-Box or the MPX theaters.
Now, are you ready to walk away from this movie loving Josh Allen's fiance? Because she
No.
is a fantastic actress.
We'll see.
Fantastic actress.
We'll see. I've been looking forward to this one. Last week I got to see Minecraft, so I'm hoping to see a good
hopefully
movie.
this kind of actually revitalizes your hope in movies, because God only knows that must have been awful.
But I've gotten a few texts. I finally got to catch up on Invincible.
Yes.
So hopefully maybe next week or the week after we'll talk Invincible. I'm about 2 episodes away.
Maybe we'll pull in our friend Michael Hopper to talk about that. And
We've been talking about that for a while, and I've had people text like, "When is it coming? When are you going to talk about
I'm
it?"
sorry, we've teased it forever. We've actually, because of the show moving to radio, has been a lot of work to get that done. That's why you haven't seen a lot of videos on YouTube lately. There will be videos coming out on YouTube, I promise. We're trying to do a better job, or I'm trying to do a better job at clipping the interviews as well and making those individual videos just for people who would prefer the shorter formats. I totally get that. It's hard to sift through a 2-hour show every day. Totally get it. We
While
appreciate
doing a
you
full-time
guys.
job.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I'll be watching some NBA basketball when I can.
Yeah,
between that
obviously.
and WrestleMania.
And I promise you, I will put out a promise to you, my friend, and all Bulls fans out there, because I know a couple of you. We will avenge you.
I sure hope so.
The Cleveland Cavaliers will avenge you. Although, we normally don't like you, but we will avenge you.
Well, it's just like the football season. Once the Bills get in and the Dolphins are out, I play against whoever's playing Buffalo, and in basketball, it's the same. Whoever's playing the Miami Heat.
There you go.
So what are you going to be watching this weekend?
To be honest with you, I have a very, very packed weekend of work, but I do obviously plan to sit down and watch WrestleMania 41, as we said. I want to head to the movies, though, to check out a completely different movie. I do plan to go check out Sinners at some point, because I agree with you, it looks fantastic. But I want to go see Until Dawn, in a horror movie that's based on a video game franchise that I adore, called the Dark Pictures Anthologies. For those of you who are fans of horror games, I genuinely tell you, go buy these games. They're a lot of fun.
What's it called again?
The Dark Picture Anthologies. I think I've texted you about this a long time ago, Sparky, but there's about 4 or 5 games now. They're all essentially put you in the seat of horror movie actors. Like you're living the horror movie yourself. You get to make the decisions that essentially make or break your entire film, or make or break your entire life in the game. You live or die based on what you do. Other characters live or die based on what you do, and you just live out a horror movie. And it's a lot of fun. I just adore these games, and I'll go back and play them multiple times. This movie looks really interesting because they kind of adapted that into real life movies, which for them in this case is the kids all go to a cabin. And essentially they are stuck in that cabin until they can live out an entire night of a horror movie without dying.
Oh, I did see that trailer.
And when they die, the entire night starts over, and they have to encounter a different horror aspect or a different threat every night.
Is that playing here in town?
I believe it should be playing here in town.
Right on.
Yes. So it just came out a couple days ago. I'm very excited to go check this out. I do know the entire hatred of video game movies. I get it. It's really hard to adapt video games into movies for some reason. I don't think this is going to be one of those. I think this is going to be a very nice and fresh take on not only the horror genre, but video game movies as a whole. So I think this would be a really cool step forward for them.
Well, if you're working and you're stuck driving around, you can always keep it right here on ESPN Bakersfield. Later today, we'll have a doubleheader for both of those play-in games, as well as tomorrow we'll kick off with some Saturday morning baseball with the Royals at the Tigers, with coverage starting at 9:30 a.m.
Tigers playing good ball too.
Followed by the Timberwolves at the Lakers, 5 p.m. And then Easter Sunday, we'll have the OKC game starting at 9:30 in the morning on whoever they end up playing. And some Sunday night baseball, Padres at Astros, first pitch or coverage beginning at 3 p.m. Is there any other? I was going to ask you, and this is a change up because I didn't tell you during the break.
That's good.
But midget wrestling.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if we could little people wrestling. Let's call it that.
That's what it's called. It's midget
I know,
wrestling.
but I still like it's fun. But I was dragged to a little people wrestling event last night downtown, or really off of Union, by a couple friends. It was a fantastic time. We had a great showing. That is why I'm not going to lie to you. If you noticed, I am pretty tired today because I didn't get home and to sleep at a decent hour as I usually do.
Well, you're a youngster.
It is what it is. I can rebound. But no, it was a lot of fun. It's just one of those things that a great way to start out the WrestleMania weekend with a little bit of wrestling, little being the pun there. And it just was a entertaining night. Let's just say that. I wish I knew the actual
the federation or whatever.
Yeah,
it is,
the name of the organization that puts it on, or the name of the nightclub we were at. I really don't know either. It was off of Union, right there next to Casa Munoz, for anybody who knows where that's at. But it was a great time. It was just a good, entertaining night of wrestling. Had a drink or two, and it just was. That's about the long and short of it. I enjoyed my time there, but I think that's a one and done for me. I don't think I'll be going back.
Was it Midget Mayhem?
I think it was Mania.
Okay.
But it's something like that. It was something Mania. But I really don't know, to be honest with you.
I've gone, but it was been probably 15 years.
That's what I'm saying. I went because my best friend had texted me. This was a bucket list thing for both of us that we had talked about forever. And she had found the tickets and said, hey, you want to knock it out? And I said, you know what? Why not? This could be a fun way to start out WrestleMania weekend. And it was. It was a great, enjoyable time. Will I go do it again? Probably not. Probably not.
It's
but
one
that's
of those
just
things
me.
you just cross off the list. I've done that.
Cool. Done. We're out of here. But that's all we got for you guys this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Join us back here again on Monday, 7 to 9 a.m. as usual, as we will be running down WrestleMania, NBA playoffs. Many, 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 many more stories will be coming out over the weekend. I promise you that we will get you guys updated on Monday. Thank you so much for listening to the Early Bird Special. We got to get out of the way for the Great Rich Eisen Show. I'm Sparky. That's Burdick. I'm sorry. I'm Burdick. That's Sparky. I apologize. See,
Happy Easter.
I'm tired. Happy Easter to everybody. We'll see you guys next week. Sparky, let's get out of here.
Let's do it.